In this video, we're going to talk about spreadsheet design and how you can design your work so that you can undo changes you make so that you can retain the original data and actually make alterations to the data in a lossless way. So let me show you what I mean by that. We have a bunch of different car models here, and we have their sale percents, we have their original price in thousands, among other things. And let's say in this situation, we want the ability to change the sales percent. Right now, the Audis are both at 10% off. Let's say that we find out they're supposed to be at 20% off. So we could just go in here and type 20, and now our data is correctly updated. Here's the problem with that approach, though. Maybe you make a bunch of different modifications, and then you hear later, oh no, wait, the Audis are supposed to be returned to whatever they were before in terms of their percent off. And you don't remember what they were before. You have to re-import data, you have to look it up, you have to do a lot of manual work to get the data back to where it was, because you're actually working in a destructive way. You're working in a way that changes data irrevocably. Once you change that document, close it, and reopen it, there's no way to get that back. So basically, what I want to show you now is how to make changes in a way where you always are retaining whatever the original data output is. So I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to make two new columns over here. One is going to be called the final sales percent, and the other is called sales percent modifier. There's a bunch of different names that you could use, obviously. So let's say we have Audi here. We want these to be 20%. So I'm going to, first of all, select both of these columns and go all the way to the bottom of the document and make sure Excel knows that these are percents. They're centered. We're good there. Now, I'm going to go here and put 20% for the Audis. Okay, great. Now, what we want to do is make this column read where when this cell is empty, it should always return whatever the original data was. But if this cell is not empty, it should return whatever the modification, the modified version was. So I'm going to say, I go up here, I'm going to say if it's going to be I3, I'm going to lock by column, if that equals space, which is two quotes, if that equals nothing, we would definitely want to return K3. Otherwise, in other words, if that is not a space, we would want to return I3. Also locking by column. And there you go. When you copy this formula down, you can see that it will always return the original sales price unless it's being modified. And this is a great way for you to make a lot of different modifications and not worry about losing what the original data said. Now, this is a great approach. However, there's one limitation to it. Let's say that you have data coming from a tool, maybe from a data set or a database tool, and you have to keep re-importing the data for some reason. And basically, when you re-import the data, maybe Audi is not on the same row. Maybe there's other cars with A's in their names above it, or maybe there's no Acura in the new data set. And Audi gets moved up too, and now these 20% modifiers, they don't line up with the correct car manufacturer, make, and type. So what you want the ability to do now, instead, there's another way to go about it, is you want the changes you make to be retained as you re-import data. You want the changes you make to be tagged to these different combinations of manufacturer, make, and type, and you want them to always be populated properly as you do work. So that would require us to use a different group of formulas. We're going to use VLOOKUP, actually, and we're going to make our modifications on a separate column. So let me just copy this and this. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to paste those here. I'm going to put the manufacturer, make, type over here, and the sales percent modifier over there. Great. Now I'm going to select this cell, go all the way to the bottom of the document. I'm going to give this another color. I'm going to make sure Excel knows that these are going to be percents. Actually, this one's not going to be percents, but that's okay. Let me undo that. I'm going to make sure this one's percents. Okay. And then I'm going to select this again, and I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to say sales modification table. Great. Notice I put an underscore at the beginning. That makes it easier to find your named ranges when you're typing formulas later. So the way this goes is, let's say the certain cars we want to change are the two Audis, right? So I'm going to copy these and stick them over here. I'm going to paste them as value so that it looks nice. And then we know these are going to be 20%. And that's all we know right now. So what we're going to do is now we're going to, instead of using this as a modification column that we manually enter data into, we're going to make this formula based. So we're going to say VLOOKUP, this maker type, and we're going to look that up in our sales modification table. And then we're going to look that up in the second column. We're going to make that a false, an exact match. And you see it returns an error. It returns an error because these items are not in that table. As I drag them down, drag this formula down, these don't return an error, but the rest of them do. So what you would need is the if-error formula. And the if-error formula would basically make this empty. That way, it doesn't make any changes if it does not find this item in the lookup table. So now you can just easily say, okay, let's say I want this Dodge Spirit to be changed to 10%. It's only 5. The way to go about it, you would just copy it. You'd go over here. You'd paste it in its value. And you'd say 10%. And now when you go back over here, this change occurs correctly. So once again, if you were to paste in this data, if you were to resort it or move it around, these modifications will follow the data based on the make and model. One other thing worth noting is some of you might have noticed that really you don't need 2 columns here if you're going to use the VLOOKUP approach. You could actually use 1 column. And the way that formula would work is like this. You would say in the if error case, you would just use the original sales number. And that would bring down the original sales. That's basically, it makes this column unnecessary. You could just call this one final sales, and you could delete this column. I'm not going to do that because the one advantage of retaining the structure that we used is that you can actually see the changes on this sheet, and you can know offhand where the changes are actually happening. So I won't change that because it's a little bit convenient to have that feature. But yes, in fact, you could definitely collapse those down and just, keep all the modification work over here. Great. Thank you for joining. Please comment if you have any questions, and like the video if you found this helpful, and then please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this.